Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Paramahansa, Padurika Ashtotar, the Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. And Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa, Padurika Acharya Ashtotar, the Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya, Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Isopanisad Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Okay, so Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 10th day of February 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from Sri Isopanisad, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are finishing up Mantra 12 today. So we'll chant it together, then I'll read the translation. But I've been encouraged by Dharma Setu to go back to the standard that Prabhupada set, and that is word by word, and then chant the verse. I think we'll do it word by word, then the line. Word by word, then the line. What do you think? Let's see if it improves our pronunciation. Andham tamak pravashanti. Andang tamak pravashanti. Ye sambhutim upasate. Ye sambhutim upasate. Tato bhuya iva te tamo. Tato bhuya iva te tamo. Ya u sambhutyam rataha. Ya u sambhutyam rataha. Andantamak pravashanti. Ye sambhutam upasate. Tato bhuya ivate tamo. Ya usambhutyam rataha. Andang tamak prabhashanti ye sambhutim upasate tato bhuya ivate tamo ya usambhutyamataha andang tamak prabhashanti ye sambhutam upasate tato bhuya ivate tamo ya usambhutyamataha andang tamak prabhashanti ye sambhutam upasate tato bhuya ivate tamo ya usambhutyamataha andang tamak prabhashanti ye sambhutam upasate tato bhuya ivate tamo ya usambhutyamataha andang tamak prabhashanti ye sambhutam upasate tato bhuya ivate tamo ya usambhutyamataha andang tamak prabhashanti ye sambhutam upasate tato bhuya ivate tamo ya usambhutyamataha. Translation. Those who are engaged in the worship of demigods enter into the darkest region of ignorance, and still more so do the worshippers of the impersonal Absolute. So we've come to the last few paragraphs of this lengthy purport, where Prabhupada says, the ignorant pseudo-religionists and the manufacturers of so-called incarnations who directly violate the Vedic injunctions are liable to enter into the darkest region of the universe because they mislead those who follow them. These impersonalists generally pose themselves as incarnations of God to foolish persons who have no knowledge of Vedic wisdom. If such foolish men have any knowledge at all, it is more dangerous in their hands than ignorance itself. Such impersonalists do not even worship the demigods according to the scriptural recommendations. In the scriptures, there are recommendations for worshiping demigods under certain circumstances, but at the same time, these scriptures state that there is normally no need for this. In the Bhagavad Gita 7.23, it is clearly stated that the results derived from worshiping the demigods are not permanent. Okay, for extra credit, what's the verse? Antavat tu palam tesham. Alpavat just antamadasam tesham. Those who worship the demigods go to the demigods, those who worship me come to me. Antabat tu palamtesham. It is clearly stated that the results derived from worshiping the demigods are not permanent. Antabat. Since the entire material universe is impermanent, whatever is achieved within the darkness of material existence is also impermanent. The question is how to obtain real and permanent life. The Lord states that as soon as one reaches Him by devotional service, which is the one and only way to approach the personality of Godhead, one attains complete freedom from the bondage of birth and death. In other words, the path of salvation from the material clutches fully depends on the principles of knowledge and detachment gained from serving the Lord. The pseudo-religionists have neither knowledge nor detachment from material affairs, for most of them want to live in the golden shackles of material bondage under the shadow of philanthropic activities disguised as religious principles. By a false display of religious sentiments, they present a show of devotional service while indulging in all sorts of immoral activities. In this way, they pass as spiritual masters and devotees of God. Such violators of religious principles have no respect for the authoritative acharyas, the holy teachers in the strict disciplic succession. They ignore the Vedic injunction, acharyopasana, one must worship the acharya, and Krishna's statement in the Bhagavad Gita 4.2, evam parampara praptam, the supreme science of God is received through the disciplic succession. Instead, to mislead the people in general, They themselves become so-called acharyas, but they do not even follow the principles of the acharyas. These rogues are the most dangerous elements in human society. Because there is no religious government, they escape punishment by the law of the state. They cannot, however, escape the law of the Supreme, who has clearly declared in the Bhagavad Gita that envious demons in the garb of religious propagandists shall be thrown into the darkest regions of hell. Bhagavad Gita 16:19-20. Sri Isopanisad confirms that these pseudo-religionists are heading toward the most obnoxious place in the universe after the completion of their spiritual master business, which they conduct simply for sense gratification. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. Prabhupada is not mincing words here. Just like the Isopanisad, the mood of the Isopanisad. Those who are engaged in the worship of demigods enter into the darkest region of ignorance, and still more so do the worshippers of the impersonal Absolute. So, I think I made this point last time, or one of the last times we spoke on this verse. This word rataha at the end of the verse, sambhutyam rataha, this appears in Bhagavad Gita in the context of the Vedavata Rata, that so-called knowers and practitioners of the Vedas, and in text number 9 we had those who are cultivating so-called knowledge. This word vata appears again and again. So the general point being made here is that why the worship of the so-called Absolute, the impersonal Absolute, enter into a darker region than the demigod worshippers? Because they're more dangerous in society. It's one thing to be ignorant. Everyone's ignorant. No one really knows, practically no one knows the real truth of life, of who we are, why we're suffering, how to get out of it, who is God. These questions don't even arise. That's bad enough. But to propagate ignorance, propagate false so-called truth, or absolute truth, it's so dangerous, you can see, for society. People think they're getting a shelter, they think they're making progress, but they're just being exploited. And so those who do that are the worst offenders at the lotus feet of the Lord, and they suffer even more punishment. So this entire Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, beginning with Lord Chaitanya, of course beginning with Lord Krishna, but with Lord Chaitanya's most prominent member, is meant to dissipate this darkness of ignorance. Lord Chaitanya really came to preach the teachings of the Srimad Bhagavatam, that he said himself. And you study the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's many, many verses there describing the glories of chanting the holy name. Right in the first chapter of the Bhagavatam, Apanaksang Satim Goram Yannama Vivashoganantatak Sadyo Vimucheti Yadvabedi Swayambayam. I remember memorizing that verse. Is that those who are entangled in the clutches of birth and death, Maya, can instantly be delivered, even by indifferently or, not with great faith, chanting the holy name. And the last verse of the whole Bhagavatam talks about Nam Sankirtan. Very last verse. Nama Sankirtanam Yasya Sarva Papa Pranashanam Pranamo my brain is not working today. I forget the last Sanskrit, but it says, I bow down to the Supreme Lord Hari, the chanting of whose name destroys all sin, and the bowing down to unto whom delivers one from ignorance, or whatever like that. So, the pall of ignorance that covers this world gets thicker by the day. You remember that there's these 4 principles of religion in the first canto: austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. And when Maharaj Parikshit went out and he saw Mother Earth in the form of a cow being tormented by Kali, and Bali, and the bull, who's Dharma personified, Dharma the bull, was standing somehow hobbling on one leg of truthfulness. The other 3 had been destroyed by Kali: austerity, cleanliness, and mercy. You can see this very society we live in is barbaric. I mean, the thing with the housing, why are there so many homeless? Well, there's various people have theories. Well, one of the reasons is there's no affordable housing. You have a lot of people homeless who are actually working. Not so much close by here, but you have a whole bunch of people who work but can't afford housing. They're living in their car, and going to work, somehow imagining. Why? Because the big banks and these guys, when the crash happened, they bought up all the houses. They bought them up for cheap. But they don't sell them. They rent them. They rent them out at high prices. So there's nowhere to live. So this is, and the way that they keep the people confused and pacified is by lying to them through the media, through the internet, through the Twitter, through all the kinds of things. People become confused. So Srila Prabhupada emphasized the chanting of the holy name and the distribution of transcendental literature, beginning with Back to Godhead magazine. You remember that first Back to Godhead, so we were going to print that in the 22nd Avenue, and then they went out and took that simple, and from there it grew. Once Prabhupada said this BTG is the backbone of the movement. Now the one thing that the BTG had that was so important at that time was giving the devotees an outlet for their writing also, and that's not so much stressed anymore, but that Prabhupada definitely wanted us all to write. Of course, now how many people can get an article into BTG? But that's a very important part of the program. So here we have this worship of the impersonal absolute, or that which is not absolute. And the part that we read, Prabhupada is talking very strongly about the ignorant pseudo-religionists and manufactured so-called incarnations. So people, when they don't know the standard, they're easily cheated. And these so-called yogis and incarnations, they see that people are looking for some guidance, they're looking for something to believe in. And so they claim themselves to be the Messiah, or they claim themselves to be God, or at least a great sadhu. And then they come and they get so many followers and they exploit them. And meanwhile, people are not getting the real truth. And right near the beginning, again the first chapter of Bhagavatam, what's the characteristics of this age? Remember, prayanalpayashak sabhya, kalavasman yugejana, manda sumanda matayo, manda bhagya upadrita. He says, for the most part, these qualities that he's going to elucidate characterize this age. People don't live very long. That's the first thing. And even in these United States, the average longevity is going down now. You know that? Because so many people are dying of deaths of despair, overdosing on drugs, alcoholism, suicide. This is the nature of the United States right today. Alone amongst so-called advanced nations. So they don't live very long. Now you read in the Bhagavad Gita, you understand, and to really perfect yourself in yoga requires a long time. How long did Valmiki meditate? 60,000 years. 60,000 years. Of course, that was in the Satya Yuga. But even today, it requires a long time. And not just longevity, but it requires the time within your lifetime to do it. If you're always running from here to there, you got 3 jobs trying to hold things together. It doesn't matter how long you live. You don't have time for self-realization or even to contemplate. So that's the first thing, not a short lifetime. Manda. Manda means lazy in the matter of self-realization. Who's really interested? Even Krishna says right in the Gita, and that was 5,000 years ago, Manushyanam sahasashu kasya jadati siddhaye. Out of many thousands of human beings, one will strive for siddhi, for perfection. They're even interested in these things. And of those few who achieve perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. That's the rarity of pure devotion. So we're lazy. And if we happen to be interested in things spiritual and these higher questions, then the chances are really good we'll be misguided. Manda sumanda matayo means misguided. And therefore, manda bhagya means unfortunate and always disturbed. So with all of these disqualifications, you can see people can easily be taken advantage of. And that's what happens with these pseudo-incarnations, impersonalists, so-called yogis, bogus yogis. Okay. So the main problem here is that even if you worship the demigods according to the rules of the Vedas, I mean, this is right in the 7th chapter, which Prabhupada quotes. It says the best you're going to do is going to be go up to the higher planets somehow, go to Indraloka or one of the other lokas. But they're also permanent. Compared to this, Earth, millions of years, that's fine, I go for it. But then you come back down, and then you're in birth and death right here again. And who knows if you're going to be in a situation to practice that principle again. You may actually be degraded to animal life. So it doesn't really help you. It's misguiding. And that's why he says those who worship, they worship in the darkness of ignorance, a dark place eventually. So then Prabhupada is harking back to the previous verse that uses this rata word, and that is about, you remember, those who worship or culture ignorance, enter into darkness. Worse still are those who culture so-called knowledge. They think that they're getting educated, but actually they're staying in darkness. Prabhupada was always railing against the university system, where people learn so much in technology and so many different things, but they haven't even asked the question, what's the difference between a living body and a dead body? You like to cite this incident he had. He visited MIT, one of the premier universities in the world, and he asked the audience, where is the department here that teaches the difference between a live body and a dead body? In other words, nobody raised their hand. There's nothing to do with the soul there. So that's, foolish men have any knowledge at all is more dangerous in their hands than ignorance itself. In other words, if you know you're ignorant, then you'll try to get some knowledge, and if you're fortunate, you go to the right source. But if you think you know it all, then you won't be searching. You're insulated by that so-called knowledge. So that's very dangerous. So he's just talking now about the modern so-called impersonalists who are just out to exploit the people. So if the impersonalists, they're looking for liberation, the easiest way to get liberation is through bhakti. It comes as a byproduct. But the so-called liberation that's there by those who preach impersonalism is fool's gold. It's not really liberation. This is the demigods praying to Krishna in the womb in the 2nd chapter, 10th canto. Prabhupada would always quote this verse. Besides the bhaktas who they've been describing, there are others, O lotus-eyed Lord, who are averse to worshipping your lotus feet. And though they may think themselves liberated, it's just vimukta maninas, it's in their mind. They're actually in pure intelligence. Because they're averse to worshipping your lotus feet. So the very few out of them who are willing to practice the extreme austerities to suppress the senses and burn out or cleanse out, at least to some degree, the desires in the mind, they can rise up to the Brahmabhuta platform. But they have no engagement there. They're not devotees. Krishna in the 18th chapter, he describes the devotees, Brahmabhuta prasanatma nasochin samaksavesha bhuteshu mad bhaktim labate param. If you go to you get to the Brahma platform through the practice of your devotional service, you can be secure there because then you'll be engaged fully in devotional service without any deviation. Then you can stay on that blissful platform. But these pseudo-religionists and advanced impersonalists, they have no standing there because they've obliterated the whole understanding of their personality, of their eternal Swarup. So that's not going to help anybody. And they mislead others, so many others. Pseudo-religion have neither knowledge nor detachment from material affairs. Now remember, and for most of them, want to live in the golden shackles of material bondage under the shadow of philanthropic. This is a brilliant sentence. They want to live in the golden shackles of material bondage under the shadow of philanthropic activities disguised as religious principles. So, this is something Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was very much preaching against. And that is that in the name of religion, to engage in philanthropic activities. Now, we engage in the greatest philanthropic activity because it's central to our philosophy, and it actually helps people to solve their material problems permanently by going back home, back to Godhead, and actually regaining their real swarup and the real nature. The liberation, the freedom from all the suffering here becomes a byproduct. But to make that the main goal, to solve people's material problems from philanthropic work, it's foolish. Again, because it's temporary. There's going to be more problems. There'll be more disasters. You've helped feed so many people, okay, that's fine, But then they'll just get hungry again, or there's something happen. Now, to distribute prasadam, that's one thing. But they should know it's prasadam, and there should be some understanding that they're contacting Krishna, and it shouldn't be just feeding, because that's not what we're all about. Then they live in the golden shackles of material bondage. By false display of religious sentiments, false display, they present a show of devotional service while indulging in all sorts of immoral activities. So the idea is that you can't give up the immoral activities, the four pillars of sin, while pretending to be a devotee, or pretending to be religious or advanced or spiritual, and at the same time not genuinely serving Krishna according to the rules and regulations given by the parampara, by the scripture. It's called the Amnaya. So, because after all, it's in the heart. If it's all a facade, then that desire for material benefit and material enjoyment is going to remain there, and eventually you'll yield to that. So many stories, about famous yogis who come to the West, teach the hot yoga guy. I don't like to name their names. It's very popular. It works. It's a workout in the steam bath. People feel better. And the guy was just a dog. He was exploiting these poor women and everything. It's just finally there was a suit against him. He fled the country. He said, you can't come back to the United States anymore. It's horrible. And this is people who are a little interested in yoga, they get sucked into that, and their spiritual life is ruined. I'm sorry? In the U.S. Yeah. Still making money, but if he comes back here, he'll get arrested. Oh, Krishna. So, Prabhupada calls to mind the importance of the acharyas. And what is the acharya principle? There's three basic principles. They know the shastra, they live the shastra, and then they teach. And that's the person who we need to find to guide, and someone who's following him. They ignore the Vedic injunction, acharya upasana, one must worship the acharya, and Krishna's statement about the parampara. Instead, they mislead people in general. They themselves become so-called acharyas, but they do not even follow the principle of the acharyas. So when Srila Prabhupada was in India, you have to remember, this book was written in India and eventually printed in the United States. And so at that time, and even today, I think, it's more prominent there. There's so many false incarnations, on every street corner. But the real famous ones, they left India, came to America and made a killing. They find followers with money, and this is what they're really after. They cannot, however, escape the law of the Supreme, who has declared that in the Bhagavad Gita, the envious demons in the garb of religious propaganda shall be thrown into the darkest regions of hell. And he refers to the Bhagavad Gita, so let's go to that Bhagavad Gita. I'll push that button right there. Come on. Here we go. Okay, so this is the end of the 16th chapter, which has some very important instructions. So he's just described how these demons eventually get thrown down, down, down. He even uses the words they're perpetually, in hell, and they never come to me. But, it's as good as forever, many, many millions of years. Tanaham dushatak Quran. This is text 19, probably referred to. Tanaham dushatak Quran. Sangsareshu nararaman chapamya jastram ashubhan asurisheva yonishu. Those who are envious and mischievous, who are the lowest among men, I perpetually cast into the ocean of material existence, into various demonic species of life. Asudim yonamapanna mudha janmani janmani mama prapa vakontaya toto yantya damam gatim. Adamam means the lowest. They go to the lowest place. Attaining repeated birth and death among the species of demonic life, O son of Kunti. Such persons can never approach me. Gradually they sink down to the most abominable type of existence. And then he has these 4 verses which I like to review every now and then, which are really key to our whole practice. So first he says, Tribadam narakasedam dvaram nashanam kama kroda sata loba tasmarita trayangtaje. That there are 3 gates leading to this hell: lust, anger, and greed. Every sane man should give these up, for they lead to the degradation of the soul. Now that's just instruction for everybody. That what are the binding forces here? It always starts with kama, with material desire, headed by sex desire. And when one yields to that, eventually becomes angry, because you got to become frustrated. The desire is unlimited, but the ability to satisfy the desire is terribly limited. And so one becomes angry at someone or something, or even at yourself, for not fulfilling the material desires. And along with the kama comes lobha. Is that what is the difference between lobha and kama? Well, kama is the actual desire to enjoy, and lobha is a desire for the means to enjoy, the money, the gold, the things. And eventually the means itself becomes an object of gratification. Just to have a whole pile of gold, the classic miser, he just takes the gold out and looks at it, and puts it back. And who is the miser? The Avanti Brahmin, you remember? He was eventually delivered. But he was so miserly that he wouldn't even spend his money on necessities, his whole family. And eventually, he lost everything. They kicked him out. It's like Job, He just lost everything. And at his lowest point, he was delivered. In other words, he became inspired and realized, oh, this is actually good fortune. He became a great devotee. But then he would go everywhere. People would insult him. They would urinate on him and everything. But he was tolerant at that point. So this is the gates. This is the opening. If you surrender to kama, to lust, to anger, and lobha. I mean, there are people in jail now, in prison, who were trying to be devotees, but out of some anger or rage, they committed some crime against someone who they thought belonged to them, and they're sitting in jail right now. So these are all dangerous things. It all begins with material desire. So one should give these up. Therefore, etat trayam tajet. And here's the benefit of doing so. Etat vamukta konteya tamodvara is to be in one who is liberated or free from these 3 gates. Acharat yatmanak shreyas. We're back to the word acharati, acharya. He acts for his ultimate good, shreyas. And tato yati param gatim, ultimately goes back to Godhead. So this is the basic instruction. But then is probably the most famous of these, those who notice, yek shastra vinamutsaja, vartate kamakarataha, nasa siddham avapnoti nasukam naparam gatim. One who gives up the instructions of Shastra, he who discards scriptural injunctions and acts according to his own whims, kama again, kama karata, attains neither perfection nor happiness nor the supreme destination. So this is important instruction. So the solution, or the final verse here, is key. Because he just brought in the Shastra, right? Tasmat shastram pramanam te karya vyavastito. Gyatva shastra vadhanoktam karma karta miharasi. And this is the sine qua non, or this is the essence of whether or how fast we can advance, whether we can follow this verse. Therefore, one should understand what is duty and what is not duty, what is to be done and what should be avoided, by the regulations written in the scriptures. Vidhi, Shastra Vidhi. Knowing such rules and regulations, one should act so that he may gradually be elevated. So it's not just enough to know them, one actually has to act according to them, accept them as pramana, or evidence as to how one should act and not to act. And that was Prabhupada's whole principle. You chant Hare Krishna, that's the ultimate goal, you to chant purely, but in order to maintain the spiritual platform that you achieve by chanting Hare Krishna with some concentration, you have to mold your life in such a way that it follows according to the Shastra and according to the example given by the Acharyas. That's the great value with the Acharyas. Without the Acharyas, the books alone wouldn't help us. You need to have an example of someone who's actually living the books. And then you get inspired to read, study, follow, like that. Otherwise, it's all theory. Like with Bhagavad Gita, it was around for a couple hundred years in the West. There was no acharya. And there was no proper explanation of the Gita either. So the two are essential. And so we need to become advanced, as a duty in order to be able to help others as well as for our own benefit. That's the idea. Okay, any discussion on this verse and its important instructions? What is duty and what is not duty? Okay, let me go back to the Isopanisad. They're heading to these pseudo-religionists who are following this, the first two verses we read from the Bhagavad Gita, and becoming enemies. And what's always amazing to me is you contemplate, okay, we know about the demons, we have the Kamsa, and we have the Jarasa, and we have so many demons today, people who are indifferent or inimical toward God and God's devotees. But every one of them, and every single insect and bird and beast and fish and everything, was once a great devotee in the spiritual world. But we've lost that, get covered over. It's just a question of the consciousness being covered and then buried, to such a degree you're standing as a tree for hundreds of years. So with that understanding, how eager we should be to use this human life in such a way that we can escape from this trap. It's all a question of consciousness. The matter is just moving according to the consciousness. And our destiny is entirely wrapped up in the consciousness that we're able to develop and maintain and sustain, even when there are circumstances that aren't favorable for our devotional service. In other words, we have an incredible chance now. We have the temple, we have the devotees, we have the mantra, we have everything, the prasadam, the deities. And we should take full advantage of it and progress as far as possible as we can in this lifetime. It just seems there's a kind of a madness that's taking over in the Western world. People are joining a cult, which is characterized by just adulation, blind adulation of a leader who somehow has bamboozled people into believing that he can, I don't want to say lead them to the promised land, but it's the equivalent of that. And so it's a very we know from history that this happens periodically. We had the Nazis, we had the fascists, we had the Roman Empire. You look back, and people get led down a path which eventually leads to utter disaster. It can happen here. It is happening here right now. So with all of that, you got the climate change, you got the coronavirus, you got this threat, that threat. Will there be food tomorrow? Every moment counts. Every mantra counts. This is how we should be. And if nothing else happens, then our own body gives out and creates our own personal disaster. So there's no time to waste. This is the Maya's trick is trying to convince you that there isn't great urgency. I was last night. Was it? Last night. I forget when I'm dealing with these verses. Maybe it was yesterday last time I gave class. This characteristic of the Goswamis, how they gave up instantly all of their wealth and influence and position and everything, being inspired by Lord Chaitanya. Turnam, what does it say? Chakdva turnam ashesha mandalapating shaining sadatuchavat. That word turnam is immediately. And it's there also in the verse where, I think it's Krishna speaking in the Uddhava Gita. He says, you've come to this human life after many, many thousands of births below it. Labdva sudurlabam idam bahusambhavan. Sudurlabam, not just durlabam, but sudurlabam. Difficult to attain human life. Bahusambhavantim, manusham. And this human form of life is unique in that it alone can give you the artha, the svarta, the goal of the soul. But it's temporary like others. Therefore, turnam, there's the word again, immediately, turnam yateta, immediately strive with all your might, mental, physical, emotional, For what? Nikshayasa, the ultimate good. That word came up in these verses from the Bhagavad Gita also. So, inquiring what is our ultimate good, and inquiring how to achieve it, and then actually working in that direction with all our might. That's a daily renewal. That's what this morning program is supposed to accomplish, if nothing else, is to encourage us to recommit even more to Krishna consciousness, because time is passing and our great opportunity may not be as obvious as it is right now. Okay, any final comment or question? Otherwise, yes, Boo?
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the nice class. So, Krishna talks, you just referenced the verse in the Bhagavad Gita, one who does not act according to scriptural injunctions.
Yeah, the Shastra Vedamutsuji.
Happiness, nor perfection, or the supreme destination.
1623.
Yeah. And taking into, well, basically the whole class.
And do what?
And taking into account, like, everything that you just said in the class. But if one is to, like, Sanatana Dharma, if one is to engage in Sanatana Dharma, or or attain the ultimate goal of life, is it ultimately all or nothing? Meaning, does one have to, is it that you give all of it and you give all of yourself, or you don't get,
well,
is it an all or nothing program?
To enter into Goloka Vrindavan, and for a permanent life of bliss and knowledge, go back home, back to Godhead. I just heard Prabhupada say this. There can't be a tinge of material desire. That has to be completely expunged. So in that sense, it's all, but it's not nothing. And the other side is not nothing. Don't forget, there's no loss or diminution. So from this position, now this is a paradox that I don't know, how to solve. But he said, okay, no loss or diminution. So if you make a little progress, then that's good for your next birth, and you're on your way back to Godhead. It's up to you how fast you want to go, but you're on your way. And eventually, when you become completely pure, you'll enter into the kingdom of God. But then comes the puzzle. Okay, if there's no loss or diminution, how did we lose so much when we came down here? Didn't we lost practically everything? Our memory of Krishna, our place in the spiritual world, We seem to have lost a lot. But let's just go from the point where we are now, that okay, having come to Krishna consciousness, being exposed to Prabhupada's books and everything, we're making a good effort. But, death can come at any time. We may not be completely pure. So that's Krishna's encouraging point right in the second chapter. You don't lose anything. It's not all or nothing. It's Prabhupada makes it. He described, once coming to Krishna consciousness, you're going back to God, and Krishna's going to drag you back, somehow or other, even though you may not immediately be willing to give up everything. Eventually you will be willing. So that's the unique benefit of practicing spiritual life, is that really it's what God wants most of you to do. If you become a powerful yogi, a billionaire, that doesn't. He doesn't care about that. Then you're still in the modes of nature, and he cares about you ultimately, but you got a lot of work to do. But if you take one step toward him, you chant Hare Krishna a little bit, or you visit the temple, you do something, then that's very pleasing. He eliminates so much karma you don't even know you have, just from one chanting, one Hare Krishna. So. But if we're serious, we read the books and we hear about the benefits of being a pure devotee, and we want to strive for that, then we realize, well, that's not so easy. It's not so easy to come to that point in this life, or just go back to God. So, but it shouldn't mean that we should get discouraged. It means that, well, all right, let me do as well as I can, and with the hope of becoming pure, becoming determined. And with the confidence that if I don't succeed, well, there's another chance next lifetime. And with all of the millions and billions and countless lifetimes I've been through, that's an element on the positive side. that we're almost back to Godhead. You know, in other words, we're in the process now, and there's no turning back. Now, of course, you find devotees sometimes, you know, commit offenses and so forth, and their progress is stopped, and they seem to become even sometimes inimical, and so that means that they're going to postpone their progress. Who knows how many births? You know, it's not. We don't want to do that. So but I think that it's not an all or nothing position. It's definitely, to gain entrance into the spiritual world, one has to be completely pure. That's for sure. But aspiring for that position and working toward that is what sadhana bhakti is all about. It's up to us how serious we want to be. The opportunity is there, and you know, daily. I like that. How do we fall from the spiritual world? Well, daily we're falling from the spiritual world. We're choosing to forget Krishna. We're choosing to not do what we know we're supposed to do, and that means that consciousness is then affected by the modes of nature. You know, we're not completely cast out unless we do something really, really crazy. But the progress is slowed, you know, and you maybe even become static. You're just sort of treading water for some time. But you're not going to be cast down into utter ignorance for you know, millions of births like before. We're very, like, super fortunate. That's the way I understand it. So, but still, again, we have our free will. And therefore, it's up to us how fast we're going to go on that path, and how you know, depends on our sincerity. The problem is, you know, the service attitude. That's everything. When the service attitude is so, you know, you're obsessed with doing some service with Krishna, and if you have you know, some service to do, you want to do it as best you can. That's a sign of advancement. And the two things go together. When you're absorbed, then the material desires just fade away to nil. And eventually, you can't even imagine how you used to do that. You know? I mean, the whole meat-eating thing is just like, God, was that the same person? You know? It's a good example of how it can go down to nil. And it means all of the material desires we have now can also be reduced to nil, to the point of the famous verse by Yamunacharya. And think of sex life as spit at the thought. You know? It's an advanced position. But it's just a question of cultivating the consciousness, you know, really getting into the holy name and so many different things. All right, I'll end with one sweet verse. This is from, we read this morning from Bill Bungwal Thakur, the 107th verse. I think this is right near the end, maybe 110. There's, I think, 112 verses in that Krishna Karnamrita. Jaya 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 Deva 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 Tripavana Mangala Divya Nama Deha Jaya 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 Deva Krishna Deva Shravana Manonaya Nama Tavatara. Oh glory, 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 Lord, oh glory unto Thee, who with Thy holy name bless all three worlds and set them free. Oh glory, glory, glory unto Thee, O Krishna Dev, whose nectar floods our ears and eyes and hearts in endless waves. It's there. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.